I think when I look back on my growing up, probably the biggest impact on me that I think led to my conversion was probably the suicide of my mother. My mother was 40 years old at the time, and for someone to grow up in the society and that to be the conclusion to their life, and not sort of being young and naive, but to actually have led a full life and still feel unsatisfied with life and to actually take their own life, raise questions in me about, where is this life leading? And that also went back, goes back to when I was younger as well. I'm thinking about death and not really understanding the conclusion to this story that is life, and sort of wanting to sort of understand what the point and purpose of life was. And I did struggle with that growing up and never really got a good answer. I didn't get a good answer from my parents or school or friends. And the best conclusion that we could come up with was that there's no real point to life, and that you just have to enjoy yourself and live your life as best you can, and try not to hurt anybody. And so those were sort of, I guess, the philosophy that I took with my life. And being of an atheist background, there wasn't that sort of religious support or philosophy that guided me. It was just this, I guess, philosophy of try to live a good life, and so that's what I was sort of struggling to do, and until when I was, and that led into periods of, I guess, frustration and ups and downs, and had and then I was, as you do in New Zealand, is we will go and do a big OE, overseas experience, and tour the world and try to make sense of things, and then come back to New Zealand. And so we went, myself and my closest friend went overseas, and we spent a year and a half in different countries throughout the world. We spent 4 months in Fiji Islands, and 4 months in Canada, and several months in Europe. And then we happened to be in the middle of winter in Europe, in Sweden, and it was freezing cold, and we didn't really know what we were doing. We were in some volunteer program that was going to train us up to go to Mozambique to help the needy, and there we were sort of fundraising on the streets and selling cards to people. And then one person suggested, well, why don't you just, if you want to go back home, and that's what we were thinking about at the time, we wanted to go back, well, why don't you go to the Middle East and take the old spice trail and the old hippie trail back to overland, and then for some reason that caught our imagination, and we thought, oh, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. We wanted to we were interested in going to Israel and being part of kibbutz, and so we thought, okay, yeah, it's going to be warm there, so we went there. And we ended up spending it, we went to this kibbutz and we actually didn't really enjoy it, and that was sort of like the beginning of, especially when our trip, where things started getting interesting. But we had this experience in Israel, and then we had the contrast of like the people and the way they greeted us when we went to Palestine, and they were just so warm and friendly, and that made, I guess that was its first impression on me, and my first encounter with Islam, when I could see that contrast. And then we spent about 6 months in Muslim countries. We went from Israel, we went to Jordan. So we didn't spend long in the kibbutz. We spent about a couple of weeks, and we said, no, we're not doing this. So we left, and we just started traveling, and we went to Jordan, we went to Egypt, we went to Turkey, and into Iran, and then into Pakistan, and we spent about 6 months altogether in just in Muslim countries. And this was probably the most profound experience of my life. And I think back, and I can say, well, I actually took Shahada and my testification of faith in Egypt, in Luxor. During that time, I was drunk and I didn't know what I was saying, but I did actually say my Shahada, and which at the time didn't mean anything to me, but in fact, it's interesting when I get further along in the story, it comes back to that place actually, returning to that place. But so we spent 6 months in these countries, different countries. So it wasn't just one country. And I think as a tourist, if you go to one Muslim country, you can experience Islam in the environment, and you can sort of disregard it because it's part of the cultural sort of, I guess, ambiance of the place you're going. But to go from Muslim country to Muslim country and to see these sort of the interconnections and the similarities between all these countries, you realise that those similarities and those connections are actually Islam, and we loved it. We had a blast. We were using all the lingo. We loved the sayings, Alhamdulillah, the Inshallah, and Assalamu Alaikum, and we were using them, and we could use them in all these countries. And the thing about these sayings, and I guess the atmosphere of the country, is that these are all things of remembrance, or as we'd say in Arabic, dhikr, where we